Hello guys, what's up? This is Mortaza and welcome to the third episode of my object-oriented programming in C# series at a coder's journey. I hope you have already watched the last two episodes and you're here to continue your learning with the third episode, in which we are going to talk about another important concept in OOP, which is called encapsulation. Now, encapsulation, as it is also sometimes called information hiding, deals with the fact that in an object-oriented design, you need to hide the irrelevant details of a class from the outside world. So when you have different classes, of course, they will have to have the opportunity and the possibility to talk with another, to communicate with another, to deliver the ultimate goal of the system, but they do not necessarily need to know about the inner details of one another. So as we talked about, the example of a car, if I'm not mistaken, in the first episode, so we have different constituent parts, right? We've got different components. And these components, of course, they're, able to communicate with one another, but they do not know everything and anything about the inner details of one another. So, the details of these components are hidden from one another, and just they provide a kind of as it is called, a public interface. With that public interface, you can, use that class and you can do whatever you want in order to reach the goal of the system. So it is very important to always try to hide the inner workings, the inner details of a class from the outside world. And this will help you to not only make these different classes independent of each other, but also the testability of these classes will be improved, and you will be able to change the implementation of these classes without affecting the other parts of the system, which is also very, very important to be able to do. So suppose, for example, here in this project, I have episode 3, right, in my solution. By the way, I have renamed the solution to OOP in C#. This is the project we created, in the last episode. And in this episode, I'm going to say, I have a car system, right? And I'm gonna create two classes. For example, I'm gonna say engine, and here let me create another class. I'm gonna say public class engine and public class gearbox, right? And of course, these classes can have different properties. For example, this one can have a model, right? And this one can have, for example, number of, gears, for example, right? Doesn't matter. Now, these different, classes have different methods, have different, let's say, properties. And of course, they can have, other methods, other properties. And some of these properties, as they are called, as they are, declared as public, are accessible from outside the class. What I mean is that if I, for example, come in here and if I declare an engine of type new engine, and then I import naming statement, and then I say, okay, for a gearbox, I can have a new gearbox, right? Now, from outside of this engine class, right, I can access this model property. Why? Because it is declared as a public property. So I can say, I'm gonna say engine.model is something, right? And the gearbox number of gears is 1. Here, it is okay to set the properties of these two properties from outside the class, but sometimes, you want to have some properties which are only, able to be set from inside the class. So, of course, you can declare those properties or not a property, let's say a private, a string secret serial number, right? This is something which shouldn't be set from outside the engine class. For example, suppose here I have a method, right? And I have this method. I'm going to set serial number, and in the input I can take in the number, right? And here, suppose I do some, operations, I do some validations, and finally I set this input, this parameter, the value of this parameter in this private field. So the user of this class, from outside of this class, shouldn't be able to have direct access to this field. And that's why I have decided to declare this field as private. This is a type of encapsulation. This is a type of, information hiding, as it is sometimes also called. So it helps us, encapsulation helps us to hide the inner details of a class, the details which are irrelevant for the other classes of the system. For example, suppose here I have a method, right? And this method is going to return us a string, and I'm going to say calculate the, for example, validity period, right? And for example, here I'm going to take in the serial number as a string, and then after some calculations I'm going to return a string, right? Again, this method is declared as private, and of course from outside of this class, from the program.cs, I cannot access this method directly. What was the method? Calculate. And if I try to do this, of course Visual Studio is going to complain by saying, engine calculate validity period is inaccessible due to its protection level. And of course I cannot have access to that secret serial number as well. Why? Because they have been declared as private fields and private methods. Why have I decided to do that? Because I believe that these are the inner details of this engine class, which shouldn't be exposed to the outside world, and the clients of my system, other classes of this system like the gearbox, for example, doesn't need to know about the existence of these methods. So that is why I have prepared them as public, and that is why I haven't incorporated them in the public interface of this class, of this engine class. Public interface is the collection of methods and properties of a class that you can directly access. So it is called public interface. Why public? Because it is public, you can access it directly. Why interface? Because it is something that you communicate with. You communicate through that interface with the class, with the engine class. So I have decided to exclude these two pieces of code from the public interface of my class. This is encapsulation. So this is another very important concept in object-oriented programming. Encapsulation, in brief, it means to hide the inner details, the irrelevant details of a class from the outside world. So every single class in my system doesn't need to know that the engine class has this private field or this method. They do not need access to these, and these are encapsulated into this class. And as I told you in the beginning, this helps me to, if for example I have a bug in this method, it helps me to resolve the bug without affecting the other classes in my system, because they are not directly in contact with this method. I can talk about encapsulation a lot, but I just want to stop this video here and then continue talking about the next concept in the next video. There are other, concepts as well, and we will go through each one of them as we go along. And when we start implementing, these concepts in C#, I think they will, become little by little, they will become, clearer, and you will understand them much better. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If that's the case, please consider subscribing to A Coder's Journey and share this video with a friend who is trying to learn OOP in C#. And if you've got anything to say, please leave a comment in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to get into a discussion with you guys. And take care. Catch you later in the next video. Stick around. Bye-bye.